Hey guys, it's Tony, and we're back on the bench. And this afternoon, we're doing some catch up work on a few projects that I've been diving into here lately, and finally getting around to doing a video on this particular reel. All right, so we're going to be uh, walking you through on a D.A.M Quick Super. Okay, so this is the heavy duty, big saltwater spinning reel made by D.A.M Quick, and it's made in West Berlin. Okay, this reel had quite a few problems. Okay, and unfortunately, right now it still has a problem. We're going to talk about that a little along the way. All right, but these reels, you can find them out there, and they're usually in terrible shape or they're in very, very pristine shape. This one's kind of in between. Okay, but this reel, it actually comes with the original manual and the original box. Okay, it's pretty chewed up. Somebody was using it, I think, for something else, but it is the original box, and it's the 270 model. Okay, so we're gonna walk you through, the reel. Thankfully, this came with the book actually, because it does have the schematic diagram and information, the technical descriptions and stuff like that. That's really helpful. This reel was missing a couple of parts too, and so we're also going to talk about that along the way. Okay, and somewhere here, I forget where it is. I think it says in here somewhere actually. Yeah, I think it's this card. This is pretty cool. Spare parts, quick spinning reel. Spare parts may be obtained from Crown Rod and Reel, 1353 North Hill, Pasadena, California, or at TNS Tackle on Ellis Street in San Francisco, California. So even though these reels, were made in Germany, you could get replacement parts for them right here in the U.S. And so, it's a little history lesson there for you. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to take this reel apart, how to service it, and we're going to talk about the problems that I ran into along the way. So we're going to start here with taking off the spool. So the spool was in really bad shape actually, and this top cap. So I actually I stripped them down and refinished them, repainted these parts, just because of what bad shape that they were in. Okay, so we got a freshly painted cap, which is nice, and a freshly painted spool. Okay, and one thing to note about the drag stack on this spool, this is metal on metal washers. Okay, technically you don't really need to service these. Okay, I mean, unless they're completely rusted. Okay, there is a snap ring in there that's really, really hard to get out. Okay, but technically there are no fiber washers in this drag stack. Okay, that's just the way that the reel was made. So now this is one point I want to talk about here. So this spring was missing. Okay, so that was one issue. And I took this spring out of some spare parts that I had. I believe it was for a pen reel. I don't know what model, but it was in a bag that had a pen reel part number on it. Okay, and it happened to work fine for this. Okay, and so that's enables this clicker tongue here, to have some tension on it. Okay, but you don't need to take these screws out necessarily to take this apart. But what you need to know about this is that this spool is divided. Okay, and when you take these out, it's going to come off into two sections. Okay, that's essentially all that you need to know about that. So I'm going to put that off to the side. Now, another thing here is there were some washers missing here. Okay, and according to the schematic, there was supposed to be a spacer washer here. I was able to just kind of throw together some spare parts. All right, and so this is actually a drag washer, probably from, I'm not sure what reel. It doesn't really matter, but it's just like a regular carbon fiber style washer. Okay, and then a couple of small brass shims, and this seemed to do the trick, because what was happening with this reel, and this is hard to see here on camera, but it was scraping, the bottom of the spool was scraping the lever down here. Okay, the bail lever right there, and there's like this huge indent in there. Okay, now you can also tell by looking at this This reel had some problems, okay? It had some real issues where something wasn't tightened down enough or something, because you can just see all the damage that's been done here. I was going to repaint this, but I said, yeah, I don't really want to get into that, just because, you start repainting the whole thing and then you start running into, different issues. You can do it, but it'll take a lot of time. I've already put enough money into this reel, and I don't think that repainting, the rest of it is necessarily, something that you have to do. I did it for this part just because the spool was in way worse shape actually than the rest of the reel. Okay, so we're going to put those parts up there, and we're going to continue taking this apart, showing you how this goes. Okay, so in a nutshell, you've got 3 screws right here. Now, this is another problem, is these screws are really, really munged up, the heads. So if you run into that problem, you're going to want to be careful. Unfortunately, another one of the issues that I ran into had to do with this up here on the bail screw on this side here. It had a different screw there, and I actually had to extract it out because the head was so munged up, because somebody took it apart way too many times. These are all like brass screws, really, really soft metal screws. So, they only have so many turns in them, on those heads, until they start giving up the ghost, basically, but you can just see, how they're starting to kind of get, disfigured and whatnot. Okay. All right. So that's your main gear set right here. It just pops right out. And this is one of those deals where, you're supposed to be able to, pull it out and flip it to the other side, I believe, so that you can go, left-handed or right-handed. But I prefer my spinning reels, to be on the left-hand side, even though I'm actually right-handed. Okay, so what you want to do here in this situation is there's a couple of different things that you can do here, and this handle, okay, you want to make sure that you clean off everything in here really well, okay, because there's a lot of stuff that can build up down there, okay. But what you need to do ultimately is you've got a pin right here, okay, and that pin you can punch out, okay, with the help of like a nail punch, essentially, okay, as well as this one right here. You can see it right there. It's kind of hard to see, but you can punch these out, okay, and then you can pull off your main gear. Okay, so what we have is a punch tool, a ball peen hammer. I might kind of have to go off camera with this, but I'll try to keep it on the camera. But we're going to take out this pin first. Needs like another tap right there. Okay, but you got to get that pin out in order to take off this main gear so that you can actually service it. And it's pretty tight, so you gotta work it with a little bit of elbow grease there, but you want to clean this off. Okay, you also want to make note that there is one washer right here. There's a thin washer, okay, but this is how you can pull off your handle, okay, the handle shaft right here. Okay, and what I like to do here is I like to try to get in here with a Q-tip and try to clean out anything that I can in there. Q-tip in this case is a little thick, so we're just going to kind of probe this with the pick tool a little bit, try to get any any dirt out of there. This reel was really, really dirty. Spent a lot of time trying to clean this up, and as you can see, it's still not entirely clean. So, okay, but you want to clean off this shaft. You want to take the 4/0 steel wool to this shaft here, okay? Now, you can also take this pin out if you want to take this assembly apart. There's really no need to do that, okay? But that's how you would do it, in the same fashion that we took that other one out. You punch that pin out, okay? We're going to take some blue grease to this shaft. That's going to help prevent any rust damage that may build up on that. Okay, and then we've got this piece here. I've already serviced this reel, so I'm just walking you through all the steps of what you do. Okay, but you want to clean off all these gear teeth and then go back with the blue grease here, like so. Okay, and that's going to work its way around just like that. Okay, and then you also want to clean out this shaft here the best that you can. And I also find it's helpful just to kind of hose this all down with a little bit of WD-40. Toothbrush. Get all that residual dirt, sand, anything that may be holding it up. And the WD-40 will, of course, help prevent, any rust damage. A little bead of oil right here on this spring-loaded tongue right here. Okay, and that's part of this whole mechanism here, your anti-reverse and like dog-like mechanism here, essentially, is what this is. Okay, and you want to exercise that really well. Okay, and then when you're ready, you can go back with this like so. And don't forget your washer. And we're going to go back with this. It is quite tight, so you might have to work at it a little bit. Get that back on in place, and then you got to get your holes lined up, of course. Which in this case they're almost lined up completely. And then what you can do sometimes is you can take a pick tool to kind of finish out that alignment. Okay, and then you go back with your pin. Get that started. Okay. Okay, and then once you finish aligning, you'll just finish it off with your punch. It's hard to keep this thing in position, so you just kind of have to work at it. And sometimes it helps to use an oversized punch, putting it back in so that you don't mess up the pin itself. It gives it a flatter surface to work with. Okay, and that ought to do it. Okay, so that's essentially how you service your handle assembly. A little bead of oil here for the knob, won't do any harm. Okay, put that off to the side. Now we've got one more screw down here to take out. And we're going to show you how the rest of this reel works. Okay, and this particular model is one of the rare ones because it has this line counter or yard counter. Unfortunately, it doesn't work on this reel. When I took this reel apart, the whole mechanism for in here was very, very rusted, and the gears in here were cross-threaded. We're going to show you that in a bit. We're going to take out the block screw down here next. So yeah, this reel was a problem child. It had a number of different issues, and you know, now it's functional at least, and it could be used if desired. Okay, so we've got the block out. You want to clean all that off, obviously. Okay, now we've got our crosswind gear here. Okay, you also want to make note, you've got some pieces here. There's a little bushing right here on the knob of that crosswind gear, and then you've also got a small thin washer down here, or there should be a small thin washer. If it's missing it, then you should have it there. Okay, and then you've got your helical meshed pinion gear right here. Okay, so we're going to talk about this here first before we get into the rotor. Okay, so this is the mechanism down here for the yard counter. Okay, and it consists of a gear set here and then a vertical gear. Okay, and then this gear here. Okay, unfortunately, this gear here is it's stripped. The threads on it are stripped. Okay, so it unfortunately doesn't work, but all of these parts were heavily rusted. Okay, and you know, this is what you run into, and you know, trying to find a replacement part, well, you know, you're going to buy a whole nother reel. Not a lot of these out there from what I could tell, and whether or not they're worth any more than the ones that don't have the yard counter, I'm not sure. I don't know if it was that popular of a feature, to tell you the truth. Okay, but you've got a screw that comes out, and then you've got this whole mechanism here, and it's kind of a package deal, more or less, trying to take this out. There we go. So yeah, they got like this little window here, and you can see it's all kind of tinted and faded and stuff, unfortunately. Okay, but this is the mechanism. Okay, and the thinking is that when you when you're reeling in the line, not casting it, but reeling in the line, you'll have a sense of how much line you deployed out. Okay, how many yards? All right, this is in yards. Okay, but unfortunately, because this piece right here is stripped, you can see right there it doesn't work. And this gear also was heavily covered in rust, and as you can see, there actually is still some right there. So it's kind of a lost cause. Okay, but if yours works, if you're working on this reel and this works, these are obviously parts that you want to clean and maintain. Okay, and so that's how that works. Okay, but we're going to put this back in position so that we can carry on with the rest of the reel. But, you know, functionality wise, you know, in terms of using the reel, this has no bearing on the reel actually catching a fish or anything like that, really. It's simply just for reference of how much line you're using. Yeah, it's a little bit of a trick with this, a little bit of a song and dance, trying to get this piece to line up just right. Put that back like that. Trying to get this window seated back where it belongs. Okay. Go back with that screw. Don't forget to give it some oil. But yeah, I know that a lot of the D.A.M quick stuff is highly collectible these days, and I've worked on a small handful of them. Mechanically, they're neat reels. I wouldn't say that they're my favorites, but one like this one is definitely a tank, and it's seen its fair share of fishing, no doubt. So made from really, really nice parts, brass and steel parts. Okay, so we've got a rotor nut that needs to come off, and I'm trying to remember what size this is. It's pretty big, I think. Yeah, it's bigger than I think it's a 14. Yeah. So yeah, you'll need a 14 millimeter socket to take this off with. So we're going to do that next here. We're going to show you what else is involved in this reel. Okay, so I mentioned parts, and it was missing parts, and one of those parts was the bail bumper, actually, which is pretty typical, right? Bail bumper's right there. Okay, this replacement is from a 704Z pen, okay, and it happens to work in there. Not really thrilled with how much money that cost. I think that cost me about $15, okay. Frankly, this reel, putting a lot of money into it, not really worth it, at least not in its current condition. It's not, just because it's missing so much paint and stuff like that, okay. But that's just one thing to make note of. Okay, so here we've got access to our main bearing, and this was another thing, was the original bearing in here was completely shot. It was very, very noisy, very, very rough, and so we had to replace that bearing with a fresh one. Another thing to note, if you wanted to dismount just the handle section of this is how you would do it. You take that screw out, and you could take this out. That would make it, handy for storage, putting in a tackle box or something like that, potentially. Okay, but you've got these 3 screws that got to come out next, and so we're going to do that so you can see the bearing. But yeah, unfortunately, the bearing for this is large and expensive. I think it was about $25. So I got that from Boca Bearing, and this new one is great. They're sealed bearings. The replacement is a sealed bearing. The original one was an exposed one, and I tried lubing it up, cleaning it, soaking it for days and days and days, but there was just no saving the bearings. They were completely shot. So, okay. So that's what that looks like there. And at this point, you can pull this assembly out. Okay. You want to clean out this whole inner housing, obviously, and you want to clean out all these gear teeth. Okay, you've got your main bearing here. It's pressed on there pretty tight, which is not unusual. I'm going to leave it, but if you need to take it off, you hit that with a little penetrating oil, okay, and you can take a block of wood, okay, and drill a hole in it the size of of this shaft here. Basically, you can set that down in there, and you can kind of gently tap that out. Okay, it shouldn't be that bad unless it's heavily rusted, right? But this is a sealed bearing, okay, and so all you really do here is you go back and you flood that with a little bit of oil, and you want to make sure that you get oil on the outside of the bearing a little bit too. That'll help prevent any rust buildup. Okay, and that's really all that you can do there. Okay, and then as for the main gear, or the pinion gear teeth, you just want to hit that with some blue grease, like so. Okay. And then once you're done with all your cleaning and everything, cleaning out the inner housing here, then you go back, set that back into position. Okay, you've got your plate, okay, that needs to ride like so. You want to make sure that you hit those threads with some oil for these small screws here as well. But yeah, like engineering wise, for this reel, it's a great piece of machinery. It's solid, and the design is all there. I think the only downside to this reel would probably be that line counter. And this reel, and I believe it's the 550 or the 550N. I have one sitting not too far from me, but they're roughly about the same size. But I think the Super is considered to be, the heavy duty saltwater model essentially, whereas the 550 I think is not quite as heavy duty as this one, just in terms of parts and the way that it operates and stuff like that. But this reel I bought cheap, and I knew it had problems, and I figured, well, I will attempt to fix the problems and see what I can do. I ended up doing that, but yeah, it ended up costing me already more than what the reel, what I paid for the reel. And I wasn't able to fix all the problems, unfortunately, like that line counter. But, functionality wise, everything else works just fine. And so we're going to spin these up now. But as stated, this is a walkthrough service, and the whole purpose of this is to show you, if you have this reel, if you're thinking of picking up this reel, how you can work on it. Okay, you want to clean out the insides here. Okay, the bail spring on this, the snap on this was really, really weak because it was really, really gummed up in there, and so we took apart the bail. In order to do that, you got to take this screw out. You can see how munged up this screw is already. Somebody before me owned this reel, and they worked on this reel a lot, I think. Okay, you want to do a little bit of oil here as well. Okay. And as for this side, like I said, I had to replace this screw and actually put a little bit of Loctite on it. Okay, because you got this plastic cap here that it rides on. Okay, but unfortunately, I damaged the original one and had to extract it out with a bolt extractor, a screw extractor, and the head just got all messed up in the process. Okay, so that's all sound there. I'm not a fan of using Loctite on threads for fishing reels, but sometimes you got to go to those measures just to keep things together and working. So that's what we did here. Okay, so we've got this piece here that's going to go back on, and you got to line this stuff up just right in order to get this right. Otherwise, it's not going to work for you the way you need it to. It's actually more like this, I think. You got to rest this in this notch right here. Okay, and then you've got these parts here. You got to go back on. Yeah, this reel, I'll probably take this reel out fishing, just because it's not a gem, it's not in primo condition or anything like that, but it's very usable, and this is a perfect surf reel. So I'm gonna give this a turn. Okay. Okay, so now you're ready to clean off your main drive shaft. Use a little 4-0 steel wool on that shaft. Make a nice smooth surface. And we're just going to put that blue grease back on there just to demonstrate what you do. You don't need to overdo it. It's going to work its way all up and down there. And we're going to slide that back slowly into position like so. Okay. You want to clean out your block and all the gear teeth on your crosswind gear as well. Okay. Then when you're ready, you put that back in. It's helpful to do a little bit of blue grease on that spike right there, that shaft. You put this back into position like so. Okay, and then you ride your your block once you load it with some fresh blue grease, like so. And then slide your pinion gear or pinion shaft, main shaft down into, line up those holes there, a little bead of oil. But yeah, I do know that this particular model is definitely a collectible, so they hold some value out there for some in that regard. And you want to make sure that you're somewhat liberal with the blue grease too in these areas here, more or less. Okay, as well as making sure that you have enough on your gears. Okay. So now we're ready to put our side plate back in position. You also want to make sure that you hit these holes with some oil as well. But yeah, this reel, I mean, I would compare it to like a Pen 704, you know, greeny or something like that. And you know, in terms of the drag system, you know, the 704 is definitely going to be superior to this, I think. But you know, but mechanically and just the way that the reel works, you know, it's definitely in that ballpark, I'd say, or like a Mitchell 302, for instance. Okay, so we want to double check all this. Make sure that you've got some fresh blue grease on those gear teeth, like so. Okay, and then when you're ready, you put this back in position. I like to have this where this guy here, okay, this lever, okay, is kind of facing downward, okay, and not upward necessarily when it's in, you know, the normal operation. Tighten this up here. And you got 3 screws that got to go back in. Don't forget to apply some oil to those as well. And we're going to spin these back in like so. But yeah, unfortunately, you know, a reel like this in the shape that it's in, you know, when you have to start replacing those parts and stuff, you know, like even the bail bumper, you know, something as small and as simple as that, that's going to be costly. And, you know, from a money standpoint, you got to ask yourself, you know, is it actually worth it? You know, I started working on this reel a couple of months ago, basically, and slowly started, you know, applying the fixes and, you know, applying new parts and stuff like that, you know, trying to do what I could with parts that I already had. But there were some things that, like the bearing was the big one. And it was like, okay, well, I mean, yeah, you could keep using it with the old noisy bearing, you know, but I didn't want to do that. Because this reel, I will intend to actually use this in my own personal collection someday. So yeah, these screws have kind of had it. I'll probably replace these at some point. Okay, you don't want to forget your shim washers here that we added to this. Okay, and we'll put our spool back in position. That click is a nice sound there. And you know, someday I might be motivated to repaint it, but for right now, I just said, yeah, I'm just gonna leave it be. So, okay. Now, if you wanted to go in the reverse mode, that's when you would pull up this lever so that you can go in reverse or forward like that. Okay. That's just normal anti-reverse operation there. Bail's firing beautifully and nice and smooth. And we'll make sure that the drag is holding, which it is. So we're going to back that off for now and leave it till we're ready to use the reel. So there you have it. That is the D.A.M Quick Super Spinning Reel. And it's all serviced and ready to go. So thanks again for watching. This is Tony with Back on the Bench. If you liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please make sure you do subscribe and hit the notification button, and that way you'll get all the updates as to when there are new videos being posted. And I do intend to keep more coming out here shortly, so make sure you stay tuned for those, and we'll see you next time.